And we're live. Hello and welcome to another edition of the LinuxInstall.net podcast. This is episode number 126. It's recorded on Tuesday, September 9th, 2014. I am your host, Brian Wagner. With me, as always, are my two faithful co-hosts, Mr. Joe Leuzzi.
Good evening, Brian.
And Mr. Walt Jevack.
Leveled up to faithful.
There you go. You're faithful. Maybe that. You've been here regularly. So, Joe, what have you been up to?
I was watching Apple's announcements today, which really doesn't have anything to do with Linux. Well, I wasn't really watching them. I was paying attention to a stream or two on them and just reading about them every so often while I was trying to do other things. But one of the things that caught my eye that was not Apple related, Dell has released a casting device similar to the Chromecast. Have you guys seen this device?
No, I have not.
I saw the post, did not read details.
I put a link of it in our little notes there. It's $80, so it is a little bit more than the Chromecast. It does work similarly to a Chromecast, but you can also pair up a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard to it. So I think it does have some more functionality to it, especially when you use it in maybe like a projector type setting, and it can basically show what's on the screen of your Android, it sounds like. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's one thing that stops me. For now, the accessory only works with Dell's own tablets.
Yeah, like the Venue 8.
Like the Venue 8.
Yeah.
But
and it being twice as much. But that's interesting that Google's getting a little competition there in the little dongle market.
The streaming stick space, yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, because most of the other sticks are like $100, roughly.
Yep. Well,
I still love the Chromecast. I mean, having a laptop in the living room and just being able to slap something over to the TV real quick, or even just throw something from my phone right over to it, that works like a champ. So, having some of the limitations of this Dell one, I think, will deter some people. But if you actually have Dell devices, I'm guessing this may work pretty decent for you.
I would think so.
I just thought that was rather interesting.
yeah, did you see similar that Firefox released their plugin that'll let you stream to Chromecast and to Roku's?
No, I did not.
Yes.
All this new information we are giving people for free.
Yeah,
What a
for the
podcast
Roku,
we
you
are.
have to load the Firefox channel, and then basically you can stream to that channel. And
That's cool.
It obviously just works with the Chromecast. You don't have to load anything special for that. But I guess they're on board with the whole streaming technology now.
That's cool. Yeah, because I guess I didn't think about it. There wasn't a Chromecast, or there isn't a Chromecast plugin for Firefox, is there?
I don't think there was before. Yeah.
Before this.
I don't believe there was either. Well, crap, I think even the one for Chrome is still in beta, it sounds like.
Have you ever tried streaming from it? It deserves that beta tag. Pretty badly. I'm streaming from, I don't know, 20 feet away from each other, maybe, and on the same network, wired or wire, like the laptop being wired or wireless doesn't seem to make a difference. It still gets really jaggy, and I have a much bigger problem with the voice and video not matching.
Yep.
Not being able to stay smooth.
I found that I definitely need to watch out when my crash plan kicks in on the laptop. Because when crash plan kicks in and it's trying to wirelessly stream something to the laptop and then stream it out to their Chromecast, I think my wireless just starts killing it, or just starts dying. So I've noticed I try to pay attention to crash plan and just put that to sleep for an hour or two if I'm streaming something, and then just plug the laptop into a wired connection. And by wiring in, that definitely has seemed to get rid of most of the issues I've had. If I have an issue, it's usually like extremely choppy to the point where I can't watch it. and then I know something's going on my network.
Yeah. No, and the only time I have that problem is with the browser. If I go to like YouTube, I'll just tell YouTube just to stream it directly.
Right. And I do a lot of stuff through the browser too, and most of the time mine is pretty. I have to say, knock on wood, it's been like I said, there have been times where it's been a little jaggy, but mainly it's because of something probably on my network. I mean, most of the time streaming from the browser is, I'm just amazed that it works the way it does. And I mean, I've watched hours of shows that way.
Yeah. I just use it like a normal thing. Netflix, streaming straight to it, it rocks. Especially on the big screen.
See, I still use the PS4 for the Netflix. The interface is just so much nicer.
Yeah. See, now I would only use it for computer stuff like you do, Joe. But
Yeah.
when I rebuilt my XBMC on an actual computer, now I use that. I don't actually have to throw it anymore. So.
Yeah. So what was that? You built a PLEX server?
Who, me?
Yeah, that's what you said, right?
Joe's done? It's me already?
Why? Joe never really has time to do anything outside of working with it at work all day, and
That is correct. Walt,
he never has time.
floor
to do
is
anything.
yours.
I've picked up the pattern. I'm just going with it at this point.
Right. Yeah,
pretty safe to say.
I had more playtime, I guess, than Joe. So I've been meaning to do it for a long time. I know you run one. I think, right, Brian?
Or
did.
I did until I started trying to shut everything off on my ESXi box so that I could replace it.
Right.
Actually, I should talk about that too. Go ahead.
And and another friend of mine started running one on Windows just to try stuff out, and I'm like, oh, what the heck? I'm gonna throw one up on my VM too and see how it would run. Doing a little research. It's supported by Debian, Ubuntu, whatever. You can download the actual server, right from PLEX. But what I found was a lot of people prefer Arch Linux because there's a package available in the AUR, the Arch User Repository, that basically is just a build script that will automatically download, compile, build, and package applications that aren't in the community or official repos already. And I guess the nice thing about that basically is if your desktop backend changes for some reason, like Ubuntu updates some audio drivers or whatever it is, and they don't update their package, you run into some issues. So in this case, worst case, I rerun the script, it updates to whatever I'm running, and you're on your way. You're not stuck waiting for somebody else to do the work for you. And I like Arch. So that was kind of a no-brainer. But it works good. My server's a little underpowered. I run those HP microservers. The N54L is the machine that it's being virtualized on. If it doesn't have to transcode, it takes like 2% CPU power, and I was running it in a 1 gig VM. Didn't hardly use any of it. So MP4s, anything that would play back at native resolution was just fine. I had it configured to do 720p, and I pushed 1080p MKV through, and it took 3 minutes to buffer at 100% CPU utilization before it would start playing, which was not very good. So we had a little discussion, and you had suggested bumping up the virtual cores, and I put a little extra memory on it. So after doing that, it only took about maybe 30 seconds to buffer, but both cores were still at 100% CPU utilization. So as far as that goes, I think my box is just a little underpowered to do that effectively, but it still played. So I was fairly impressed with that. I tried it on my phone. I had bought the PLEX app for $1 when it was on sale once, figuring eventually I was going to get around to it. And it transcoded to a lower resolution and played just fine. Same thing, though. It took about 2 minutes before it started. And as far as playing outside of my house, which was one of the things I thought maybe I would benefit from, I don't have enough bandwidth in order to actually do that effectively. So,
how much did you need upstream?
It depends what you configure to what resolution and all that other fun stuff. But I only have 512, and that's really not enough to do anything that you're going to play back on a big screen, which is what I wanted to do. I don't really care about getting it on my phone or anything. That maybe would have worked better.
So I might be okay with my 5 megabit up.
Oh yeah. You should be fine. Yeah. The other thing I was disappointed with compared to XBMC is the interface is really bland and ugly. It scrapes for the same information and you kind of get some of the same stuff, but XBMC is just so much prettier. I played it back on my Roku and my phone, and maybe those devices just don't have some of the pretty. I didn't actually install the PLEX media center that you would run on a full-blown PC, but yeah, both of those were just not anything I would want to look at on a regular basis.
I've run straight XBMC, and I don't think it's pretty at all.
See, now I don't run straight. Mine's all modded and tweaked with different themes and.
But you're running straight Plex and not doing any mods or.
You can't.
You can tweak those settings. Sure.
Not on a Roku. Not on your phone.
You can't tweak XBMC on a Roku either.
Well, you also can't play it. But on my Apple TV, I can. And basically on every other device, I can. So, so I was a little disappointed with that. So, I tell you what, though, it uses the same scrapers for movie information or TV information that all the other apps use. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it actually found a couple of entries that I normally have to manually put in. So I don't know what their algorithm is. It must be adjusted a little bit more, maybe, or maybe it was more updated because I just happened to grab a newer version of the server that was only a couple of weeks old, I think. But it did a pretty good job at finding info. So
I was impressed when I played with it. That was one of the things I was impressed with also. That worked really well. It did a very good job of. I didn't have to adjust many things.
Yeah.
It did a very good job of it.
Yeah, and it even downloaded theme music, which I thought was kind of cool. You can do that at XBMC, but it's an extra plugin. It's not baked in, so that was one thing that I was like, oh, that's kind of neat.
So that's cool. And
that killed some time.
Yeah. I think we're going to talk about other stuff that you did this week in a minute, right? Because you did a lot this week.
Yeah, I played. I had a lot of downtime.
Cool.
Again, school's back to running almost automagically, so I can do stuff.
Automation is awesome.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Well, I bought a new firewall that will be here Friday. After much discussion. Discussion. Sorry, Walt.
That's fine, man. I like talking toys.
I was debating on two different ones. I was debating on a Celeron J1900 and a Celeron. What's the other Celeron? Well, the previous revision of the Celeron. Anyways, one was dual core, one was quad. Wasn't really sure it was going to make much difference. Looked at the PCU marks and stuff like that, and the J1900, besides being $20 cheaper than the older chip and slower chip, doubled the speed, or more than doubled the speed of that processor. And I was also looking at, because I just need a low power machine. I don't want anything too big. I was looking at Atom D2500s, which is the current Atom chips, duals with dual lands, and they also were $20 more, and they were like a third the speed of the J1900. So I was like, not looking at a lot of power, like looked at power specs and stuff like that, because like I said, this is my firewall. It's going to be on all the time. I don't want to just be sucking massive quantities of power. It doesn't suck that much more power and has a whole lot more power, packs a much bigger punch. So I'll put the machine I picked up in the show notes. And it was cool, or it will be cool when it gets here. The only thing that sucked was it uses laptop memory. The boards that have that J1900 quad-core all seem to use laptop memory.
Yep.
So I couldn't just use memory sticks that I happened to have laying around. I had to go buy more memory, which kind of sucks.
What software firewall are you going to run in there?
I think I'm going to stick with pfSense. I've been debating it for a while, but I think I'm going to stick with pfSense. And I might put a virtual machine on there because there is quad core in there, and I really don't need quad cores for a firewall. So I may virtualize it, and put it in use a KVM VM for that, and split 2 gigs to the firewall and 2 gigs to something else, like a log server or something. Maybe a backup to my wonderful Pogo UNS and DHCP servers. I'm not sure.
Pogo farm.
Yeah, something to back up the Pogo farm. And I'm gonna go buy another. UPS this weekend because I want to put the Time Warner box, the firewall, on their own UPS because they're on one side of my closet, literally closet right here. They're on one side, and the server rack's on the other. So the server rack UPS is kind of full. It's only going to go about maybe 10 minutes at this point. It says it'll go 10 minutes, which means it'll probably do about 5.
Yep.
Reality. Luckily, it shouldn't need that because I also have a generator, so hopefully my generator kicks in when it's supposed to. And I won't ever need it, but I also have weird power issues sometimes during the summer. This summer wasn't particularly hot, so it wasn't a big deal. But I've had problems in the past where we get brownouts or a lot of brownouts, and that tends to drain the battery during the day because the battery keeps it a consistent power coming out. So you'll actually see, like about 5, 6 o'clock if you go look at it, that you have less time to live on the battery than you normally do. And when you get up in the morning, it's recovered and everything's fine and wonderful.
Yep.
But
what do you use to monitor the UPSs?
I'm not monitoring the UPSs at all.
Oh, okay.
I keep meaning to. It's like low on that list.
Me too.
Of things that I want to do. Because every damn one of them comes with a little USB plug to plug into my computer, and every one of my Linux boxes will be more than happy to read the data off of my computer. Off of my UPS and chart it for me or do whatever. I just keep forgetting to set it up.
I was even looking like your my NAS for free box will do it.
Uh-huh.
So I could plug it in there. I think some of the alternative router firmware will do it. The ones that got the USB hosts, you can actually use it to monitor UPS instead. So yeah, I have plenty of opportunity, just like you, not high on the priority list.
I want to play with fun stuff, like the stuff I did this week. I don't know. I would like to have it into the firewall. That just seems to make the most sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then have the firewall kick off everything else to shut down properly. If it detects it, is going to run out of power soon. The funny thing is the one server is an older i7, which I think is probably sucking some serious juice. I could probably replace it at this point with a new Core i7 and cut my power draw by, half? Since it's, 4 years old?
Yep.
Probably, because some of the newer i7 Haswell chips, I think, is where they started getting into a lot of the power saving of the power saving features.
Yeah. I just don't know how long it would take me to pay that back off. Probably a while.
All you need is the excuse, man. The time frame is irrelevant.
My guess is the chip you bought is probably going to be much more energy conserving than any Core i7 out there.
Which one? What are you talking about?
The new one that you just got.
The J
Oh,
series.
the J
Yeah.
series. Oh gosh, this J series sips like it's nothing. It's not
Yeah,
sipping
exactly.
hardly anything.
That's what I meant. It's
I mean, it's
probably
only got a 12 volt. It's only got a 12 volt 1 amp power supply, so it can't pull more than an amp. So yeah, it's not pulling very much. And the Pogos aren't pulling anything either, so they're all just sipping their energy. Hey, Walt, before I forget, there was a cool feature of the Pogos that I don't know if you saw that I discovered this week. Did you know that you can set that green light to flash as a heartbeat or
Yes.
with the CPU like utilization? So if the CPU is being used, the little green light on the front flashes based on how much the CPU is being used.
Not all of them have that capability, but yes, the V4s, you can do
The
that.
V4s, and it was interesting. Right up until they all settled down after booting up and there was nothing for them to do, and then they were all black. But, you know, I mean, they were flashing. If I turned off all the lights, I could catch it flashing for the millisecond that it actually did something.
Oh, that's cool.
But, yeah. It would be cool if I was actually getting some CPU usage out of them. But
Well, you can directly access that through
you just have to echo
a
to
command and then an on-off, color.
Mhm.
So you can program your own scripts to activate it when certain things happen.
And you can, there's two colors on them. There's a green and a red.
Mm.
And you can do both, one or the other. Because you could do heartbeat for one, and which I did for a minute. I did the heartbeat and then CPU utilization as the two different colors, but the CPU was green and it just disappeared because the red was too bright. So I think I'd have to flip that if that's what I wanted to do. But it was cool.
Yeah,
I like
that is
the
cool.
I like it mostly because since I have 3 of them in the rack, I can log into it and set that to be like the heartbeat, so it'll just be the only one that's pulsing like a heart beating, and then I know that's the one that I need to or that I'm going to unplug or
Oh, yeah.
something like that. So
That's a
I
good
thought that
idea.
I thought that was an interesting use that I came up with, but I thought it was cool that it would do all that.
Yeah.
'Cause I knew we could trigger them on and off. I just didn't realize it would do other things. When you cat the trigger file, it'll tell you what your options are, and it's pretty cool. It's
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
second page of the instructions, but
Oh, that's cool.
yes. So, should we move on?
Sure.
All right.
certainly.
So, it's a well-documented fact that I don't always practice what I preach. And so the machine that I used to download LinuxInstall.net podcasts needed an update, and I was too lazy to log in and take a snapshot. And I did the update, and it was that 1 in 100 times where, well, actually I forced an update, which is probably where my mistake was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
think.
normally have a problem with that. And as I'm doing it, it's going to affect this many packages. Whatever. Yeah, and then I went, wait, did that say it was going to update that many packages? Ah, crap, it's uninstalling this stuff. And basically I tried, not very hard, but I tried a little bit to recover from my mistake and then just gave up and went, this wasn't that hard to put together. It's probably easier just to rebuild the box and start from scratch. Because basically I wrote a script that pulls down I think it's an MKV file, the video file that I can get after we create this wonderful podcast in video form on the Google Hangouts. And then I strip out the audio, and then I use a program with FFmpeg, which actually I've switched now to whatever Ubuntu's using. It's some fork of FFmpeg because there's something I didn't understand. But I didn't want to switch from Ubuntu, so I had to switch to AV something. Which is just a fork of FFmpeg. So it took, all I had to do literally was change the name of the program that it was calling, and everything worked. But I use FFmpeg to strip the audio off. Then I take another program called Sox, and Sox does a bunch of normalization stuff so that if we screw up and Joe's really loud and I'm really soft, this Sox program will try to level us out and make us sound like we're equal. as well as some other sound cleanup and other stuff to clean up any background noises that are consistent that it can pick up and detect. It'll try to clean those up too. It works okay. Looks good enough for what we're doing. And then I do some other stuff after I've done those 2 steps to do it further. So I took and created a Docker image that pulls in my script, runs my script. It's got all the software installed that you need. I will warn you, it's about a 700 meg Docker image, which for Docker images is, I think, towards the high side. But it's because I need all the sound stuff, which isn't part of a normal. The default image was 414 meg. So I'm almost doubling the size with all the libraries that it needs to do what it's going to do. But it uses a Python script to pull the video down, and then it does all this processing. And the way I wrote the Docker, it will output all the stuff to your local directory. If you would like to try it and you have Docker already installed, I will have a link in the show notes to the GitHub repository that has the script that I run that pulls everything together. It'll go, if you don't have the Docker image, it'll go grab the Docker image for you and pull it down, and then it'll run the Docker command with all the right flags so that you get the output put in your home directory in a directory called output, and then based on that. The other things that you need are the YouTube tag at the end when you look at the YouTube video, and then you have to give it an episode number and then a name for the podcast. I should probably switch the order of those from the questions, but it asks for the number first, then the podcast name. And then it uses that podcast name and number to create the directory that it puts everything in, and then the resulting files.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. That's definitely cool.
So my very first Docker image submitted to the Docker I/O hub is one that just rips audio out of video files from Google Hangouts. But it's cool.
Heck yeah, man. I bet you a lot of people are going to use that.
I'm hoping. I'm going to start trying to do some publicity. I got to write some more documentation because there's almost none right now, other than explaining what I did initially when I initially wrote the script. That's up there. But I need to write a Docker-specific version to put that up there. But I put all the Docker files. Everything is open. It's open source. You can use it however you want. And I forget which license. I think I put the Apache license on it just to make sure that nobody was going to get worried about using it. So feel free to use it. If you make money on it, cool. More power to you. If you feel like tipping me, just let me know, and I'll tell you where to send a check.
My house.
Yeah, pretty much. Prefer cash, just saying. It's a little better for me. So what do you guys think? I know somebody was having trouble with CoreOS, and somebody else I just don't think had time. Because I just finished this on Sunday. When did I send you the link, Joe? Sunday?
I think you said Sunday night?
Yeah.
Was it Sunday night?
I think so.
No.
Yeah. No, it had to have been. No.
It was earlier than that.
It was.
Maybe. Check Google Plus. I remember reading on there.
I was just gonna look at. I think you sent me a Hangout message to see when you actually sent it to me.
GitHub Podcast Master. When did I upload it? 3 days, 5 days.
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday. Yep, because it was raining. So
Right.
I was playing Geek with my son because we couldn't do really anything else.
That's why I had time, because it was raining.
That's it. That's the excuse I'm going with.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will have a link to the GitHub repository. If you go under the Docker image directory, there's a script there called processpodcast.sh, and that is updated to use the Docker commands. You will need to run that as root, which is a temporary flaw. You will need to run it as root for right now, which I'll fix because I have to figure that out. Mostly because Docker needs to be run as root. But should all work. And I have a Docker file in there. That Docker file will create the server, pull all the stuff in from GitHub that I did, and this is the really cool thing about that I do like about Docker is I could put all the commands in to build that server into the Docker file. Anybody who wants to can go build this Docker file. They don't have to trust my sources or my Docker file that I put up there. You can go out, grab this Docker file, build your own server, and it should work, as far as I know. I haven't had anybody test that. But you should be able to take that Docker file and do Docker space build. What?
I tried.
You try to do weird things with CoreOS and install it on physical hardware and all those things that nobody does anymore.
Yeah, that's basically what it came down to. Is not overly physical hardware friendly and not overly VirtualBox friendly, which is what I unfortunately had at my disposal at the time.
Which I'm kind of surprised because they're a big Vagrant house, so I would think VirtualBox wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, they got images for pretty much everything else. Some stuff I've never even heard of before. Yeah, but I know they do have VMware with a instruction on how to convert the file to run on a ESXi, server. So I'll probably try that at home and run it on there because that way it's just all set up and ready to go.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed because the whole point of CoreOS is they're the low end back end for running Docker images, and the ISO direct hardware install does not work with Docker out of the box.
I was like, you told me that. Okay, so Walt tells me this while we're chatting back and forth, and Walt tells me this, and I'm like, oh, you're full of it. There's no way. How can the whole purpose of the OS is to run Docker, and how can it not run Docker after the ISO image? And sure enough, there it is in black and white. Yep. Yeah, you can install this way, but then you got to install your own Docker, and I'm like, why? It still doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Still very.
It's a feature.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
I
I
didn't
put-
check on. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I didn't check on like dates or anything. The only thing I could figure is that maybe there's not a streamlined setup yet. So on their VM images, they've already done the tweaking and it's just ready to run. You know, where if you did a blanket install, you still need some sort of script or setup afterwards that maybe just isn't easily feasible.
Trying to see. Let's see. They don't have it on the front page. They used to have when they started. They aren't that old. They don't say.
Yeah,
They're at the farm in the Mission District. In case you want to go knock on the door and ask them why it doesn't work. Hey, why doesn't this work? I just want to put it on hardware. Why is it so hard?
I got this old Atom machine.
And what's funny is realistically, the Atom machine should be like the perfect use case for this. I mean,
True.
This OS is only supposed to take what's it saying, 114 megabytes of RAM?
Yep. I think full blown with everything going was I think it was like 200.
And it allows for quick PXE booting and IPXE booting. I don't know what IPXE booting is versus PXE booting. I obviously need to do a little more studying.
Newer toys than I have, apparently.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is either. I don't know if I've heard of that one before.
Pixie booting I've heard of. I use all the
Oh,
time.
yeah, I've done that before tons of times. I've never heard of the I.
Pixie with an I in front of it. I don't know what that I is standing for, so probably just lost geek points for that. But anyways. So creating the Docker image actually is super super simple. Once you get your head around how Docker works and its limitations, it's easy. Well, it's always. I mean, it's never hard, but like you're doing things and you don't understand why you're doing them. Once you start to understand, and I really don't think you can understand until you start trying to build something, then you kind of get it. Like I got a whole bunch of stuff just when I tried to build this image this week. And understand, I only started working on that Wednesday night, and we just established it, released it sometime Saturday. And that included figuring out all the package dependencies that weren't in the base Docker Ubuntu, which is a reduced Ubuntu. It's a very thin thing. You just add whatever software you need to add to it. That way, it's designed to try to keep those images as small as possible. And so you just sit there and just keep kind of building on it. But once I got into it and started doing it, it was really cool. They're also, since the first time I played with it, and I hadn't played with it for a few months, they've done a lot of cool things to make it really easy to mount a local drive into the image. Mm. So for websites or other stuff, it's now really simple to just say, okay, here's where all the static content is.
Oh, that's super cool. Because I know even like some of their like the programming languages and the IDEs that are all set up and everything for you, you're stuck working in that box. But if I can access my home folders, to run regular backups of the data side and everything, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and a lot of people are using it to do, like you said, backups, data backups for databases that are inside of it.
Yep.
All that kind of stuff. So if you have a chance to play with Docker and you're looking for something cool to do, it's a great way. And this is an example of basically creating a thumb drive application. This is a one-time script. Nobody has to do anything except get Docker working. As soon as you've got Docker working, you can go grab, and if you have any Linux distribution and you're not trying to install CoreOS, if you try to do it on Ubuntu or Red Hat or Arch or whatever else it's supported on, pretty much all you have to do is whatever the install command is, space, Docker, or in Ubuntu's case, docker.io. Possibly Red Hat's case too, because there's a Docker program that beat them to the name.
Mm.
So docker.io is what the package is on Ubuntu, and I believe Red Hat. And so if you install those packages, there really isn't anything else for you to do except learn how to run the Docker commands, or do something like grab my script and say, go do this. When it tries to grab that image, my image, it'll go back and figure out that it needs the Ubuntu image too, and it'll pull the Ubuntu image for you, and you don't have to do anything. That first time it'll take a little while to run because it's got to download all that stuff, but after that it'll run super quick. And I will prove that to myself yet again tonight when I get done with this podcast, and I rip it. And I don't have to log into another machine, which is what I was doing. I can just hit F12 and get my cool drop-down menu and run the script. And it works well. It works very well. So, all right. Walt, we were talking about the rain. You were saying you were playing with some other stuff, and you almost bought something, too.
Yeah, so we were talking last week. I'm going through my gadget collection, trying to see if anything's still usable or not. And while searching and playing, I guess I should start with. So my favorite toy of all time, and it was just way ahead of the technology and the support and the back end that was available, is the old Sharp Zaurus series of products. I don't know if you can get a little focus on there or not. But it was a little clamshell, I don't know, smaller than like a Nintendo. And the screen actually flipped and went flat like your tablets do now. Woo. It's touchscreen, compact flash, SD, wire, not any wireless or anything built in, but it actually has compact flash capability. So I have like a wired compact flash card that I do my networking on. And it ran Linux, which was cool. Default was a distribution created specifically for it called Keiko, but Angstrom, using Open Embedded, had a distro for a while. Another group of people came out with another one called PDA XROM. You could run Debian on it.
Cool.
But what I found out as I'm playing with these things is none of them are supported anymore. Not even as far as like these gadgets go. I got out my old Nokia 8120, the N900 phone, figuring I'd try with some of those. They all run, they all kind of worked okay, but you were stuck with older distros. The biggest problem, and we talked about it a little bit before, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but the biggest issue that I ran into, and I actually inadvertently started a conversation with another guy who I knew from years ago that we would hack these toys. And he started playing with his about the same time, so must have been raining there also. He beat me by a day to a forum post. Is System D. All the new distros run System D, and you need at least 3.18 kernel support, whatever it is. And all these boxes, for the most part, are stuck on 2.6, so none of them will run.
Yeah, and what else did we? Oh, when we were talking about one of the Pogos, I couldn't because there wasn't a 2 or a 3 dot.
Yeah, the ONAP CPU.
Yeah, the ONAP CPU doesn't. I have to stay on the old init system.
Right.
I can't do System D. And I was kind of shocked that all of a sudden the community would just basically abandon all this old hardware, which was one of the battle cries for Linux for the longest time.
Yep.
Is, you can run modern versions of the stuff and it might run slower, but it'll always run.
Mm-hmm.
And now, that's true for any x86 based machine. I don't know how much longer it's going to be true for x86 32-bit machines, though. Yes,
I've already run into issues. All my Fujitsu U820 audio system is no longer detected. The accelerated video drivers, well, it wasn't a great package anyways, but for like the Sony Vaio P series is no longer auto. Touchscreen support for a couple of devices, the older devices, again, way ahead of their time, no longer supported. So yeah, on the 32-bit systems, they're already having issues with legacy hardware. So, but what that brought me to then is trying to decide, well, is there something newer that I could run? And one of the things I almost picked up was an OpenPandora, which is basically a Linux box the size exactly of a Nintendo DS that was built to run mostly every emulator available. You can do MAME, you can do Game Boy, you can do PS1, Commodore 64, Atari ST, Amiga system. Basically everything runs on this stupid little box. And what I ended up finding out is they're developed in Germany. Everything's done, all the work's done there. The original series of product was built in China, and all the other ones they brought back home because the build quality wasn't super great. The original boxes had 600 megahertz ARM CPU with 256 megs of RAM. At some point in time, that got a refresh. They called it the rebirth, and they bumped up the RAM to 512. Same CPU, but it was like it was the same model, but like a revision 2, which fixed a few bugs. And the current version uses a 1 gigahertz CPU, also with just the 512 RAM. And I had the option of getting a classic, which was still fairly expensive. So I talked to a guy that I knew who had one. He went through most of those models, basically suggested if you want to play the emulators, the classic and better work just fine. You ran into some slowness when you were running Windows 95, believe it or not, in order to play the old Windows games if you didn't have the gigahertz machine. Or I think maybe the N64 emulator for some of the higher end stuff was a little bit slow. But basically, the lower end would play the rest. But if you wanted to use it as actual Linux desktop, because it ran full-blown Angstrom by default, and you can install Arch Linux, Debian Linux. Can't remember if there's a Fedora spin or not for it, but you can run whatever you wanted on it. Modern, ARM CPU. You basically needed the 1 gigahertz to be able to do anything more than like a single task at a time. So although I put a bid in and I didn't win, I had the opportunity because the person who did win apparently couldn't pay, and so they gave me a second chance. But I had enough time to do research that I was like, nah, I think I need at least a 512 meg, version, to be able to run most Linux apps, with 2 or 3 windows open. But the development community behind this little thing is amazing. There's all these emulators that are just tweaked to get every little ounce or drop of, video compatibility, CPU power, memory utilization. Individual ROMs wouldn't work, and they'd adjust whatever they needed to do to get them to run. Like I said, there's different build teams for the different OSs that you can do on it. It's an awesome little box. Brand new before shipping, it's like they're $500. And
wow.
Yeah, I can't justify $500 for a toy. The other getcha that I assumed would eventually bother me is the screen resolution on the current models are only 800 by 480, and I know even on my netbooks that are 1024 by 600, I still run into problems where that's too small. So for the price, I was like, nah, I couldn't justify it. But boy, I'd like one. But it was interesting just to see they actually pulled the Flash player from the Nokia N900 phone, and they ported it over so that you're able to do Flash on the unit. And they just borrowed, from the different ARM communities, things that they've worked out and recompiled for the system. So I honestly don't doubt that it wouldn't do everything that I needed it to do. It's just, I don't want to spend that kind of money only to find out it was slow, or if I only had that extra RAM.
The thing is, for just using emulators for something of that cost, it's, like you said, it's just really not cost efficient.
Yeah, the classic you can get for $200. So that's a little more reasonable. That's Vita price range. But the breadth of games that you can play has a full QWERTY keyboard. So like even when you're running the Amiga or the C64 emulators, you actually got a full keyboard and everything. I mean, it's a well designed little unit for what it could do. But yeah, not so much. And the big thing is obviously it's a limited production run. In fact, the current model is probably going to be outdated. They're already coming out with an updated version that'll have 2 to 4 gig of RAM, quad core CPU, 720p screen. So I thought if I'm going to be spending $500 price point, I'm going to wait for those to come out in a year or so and see.
Very, very cool.
But yeah, so I had my little journey down memory lane with all my little ARM toys, and like I said, I'm still gonna keep my little Zaurus. I got it running next to me here. I got it plugged into the network and on battery, and I'm gonna goof around with that a little bit. I found a couple of distros I didn't play with back in the day. They're all unsupported. Nobody's came out with anything new in a long, long time. But I like goofing.
Hey, when you were doing your research, we were talking about systemd a few minutes ago. When you were doing your research, did you find a reason why you couldn't backport systemd to an earlier kernel?
I did not. I looked in multiple distribution forums and some of the different gadget hacking forums that I read, and every single one basically the question would be presented, and the higher end devs, if you will, always just said, if you can't run kernel 3 dot something, that's just it. There's no more work to be done. But I don't know what the reason why is.
That's just really weird to me that, I don't know, that they would all just abandon. That's abandoning a lot of hardware. I went on Wikipedia, which I put the Wikipedia link for the Zaurus on there, and I went out to Wikipedia. The one that I think you're showing off debuted somewhere in 2005. So we're not even talking 10-year. Like, it didn't even hit the 10-year mark yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
they're
got the
already saying-
3100, so that's about right.
Yeah, they're already saying, nope, not supported. And I was like, wow, but I have all this hardware that I used to run it on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have a couple of Mac PowerBooks that I was thinking about trying to bring back to life because they're Intel-based PowerBooks and trying to run them on there, but I'm not even sure. I guess they would support 3.1 kernels because of their Intel CPUs, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and with some of the distributions, well, like Arch, obviously being a rolling distribution, there's no going back to a previous that used to work.
Right.
Debian's really your best bet because Ubuntu not a little bit, but I know the 8.04 was pretty much the last version that still worked on everything with full support. And then individuals got 904, and I think they started to try 10, but 904 was the last version to support the ARM5 architecture, the ARM5 TE or whatever it is. So anything past that, now you lost hardware support as well.
Right.
And as far as getting patches and updates, 804 obviously is long gone. 1004 is end of life next year, maybe. I know they're coming up soon too, if not already.
That one, because I think it's the next one that goes to 10-year support.
Right. Yeah, and I think they're on 5, so I think they only got like a year to go, and then you're done.
Which will be interesting because we're at 10. Excuse me. We're 10-year now. We're already talking about there's just no support for that older hardware because we're at 10-year. Because it was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This will be less and less of a problem as more and more things become. Well, I mean, it'll be a problem for less people, which will make the problem harder to solve because everybody's going to go to virtual hardware, whether that's in the cloud or locally, and it won't matter what the hardware is underneath. So,
right,
you should be able to upgrade. You'll lose a lot of that hardware holdback issue, I think.
I think one of the big differences going forward, we're going to be at 64-bit with everything.
That too.
I mean, there has to be a cutoff for the 32-bit stuff to just basically fall off already.
Well, and we've already gone through that with 8-bit and 16-bit and
right.
32-bit. I mean, it's just the normal evolution.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, a lot of the bigger, I call them the pig applications that need the 64-bit because of the RAM necessity or the CPU crunching power aren't usually things you're going to run on these lower-end older machines anyways. They're physically not capable of doing it even if you could get the OS to run. Or reasonably, I couldn't see running something that would take like 4 days when I could get a new machine and have it done in 8 minutes.
Like transcoding?
Right. Good example. Yeah.
Like transcoding video? Yeah.
But there's all these distros that are out specifically with, low memory usage and, memory friendly, graphic friendly, IDE and, interface. But if they're still, based on any modern distribution, you're not going to be able to run it on some of that older hardware anymore.
Which kind of sucks because these Pogo plugs that I bought, the V4s were okay. They're 3 kernel, right?
Yeah, they're 3 something. Yep.
They're 3 something. So the ones if you bought the Pogo Plug 4s, you're fine. They'll be supported for probably quite some time because it took them a long time to come out with 3. And we're still in the early numbers of 3, so they'll probably support 3 back. But those boxes are. There's no power to those machines. They're not. They're toys. They're definitely the epitome of toys. I can easily run DNS DHCP servers on them, but they run fine for DNS and DHCP. Like I said, my only problem is once they boot up, they rarely flash when I turned on the CPU heartbeat light. I mean, And it's the slowest. Those are by far the slowest machines in this room.
Yep.
I mean, my Chromebook has more power than those things do. And so, and my phone, for that matter, has more power than they do. I just, but they're useful. And those older boxes, man, that's how I taught people to do stuff was, oh, hey, don't throw out your old PC. We'll just repurpose your old PC and you can learn how to do Linux. And I taught a whole bunch of people, not that they ever followed through with it, but I taught a whole bunch of people how to at least get started with Linux.
Yep. But now, one thing that I found really interesting is, as far as the Zaurus is concerned, OpenBSD still supports it in mainline. The current 5.5 still has 100% still support for it.
Really?
Yes. Now, with that being said, that basically means you can install it and the install will run. As soon as you try to install some modern packages that need other dependencies that have not been officially updated or supported, then you still run into some issues. But the base OS is still actually 100% officially supported, which I thought was really interesting that they're still, looking at that.
Now they're BSD.
Luckily, somebody else did footwork and found out about the apps before I did. So.
Yeah, but they're BSD, so they are not in the System 5 init to System D migration.
True.
I forget what they use now that I went and mentioned it, but they use their own. Right. Which is one of the reasons why they did that. I forgot to put that link out. I found a link. You and I had been talking about, maybe I shared it on Google+, maybe I didn't. You and I had been talking about what the differences were between them at some point, between init D and System D, and why did everybody decide they had to switch. I actually found an article that did a really good job of going moderately in-depth. Like, he didn't go super in-depth, but if you don't understand the heritage of where init D was, he does a good job of explaining that and a good job of explaining why the changes needed to be made.
Oh, cool.
And most of it hinges on parallel processing, like not holding things up. initd was a serial process. A had to finish before B, before C, before D, which made boot times really long. Whereas with Systemd, the network has to come up, and then there's these 7 services that need to connect to the network. So then all 7 of them can start at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And any dependencies on them have to wait for those specific services to start. But then you can just get this burst of stuff that's going on, which, if you have an SSD, is really cool because you can use all the bandwidth and boot everything up really quickly.
Yeah, it's ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
Did you see the link I put in the chat earlier? It's basically what iPixie is. iPixie is basically the open source implementation of Pixie. That's all it is.
Huh.
It seemed much more intense with the I in front of it.
Yeah. With an I in front of it, you never know who it's coming from.
True.
Yes. The company in Cupertino. So, all right, well, that ends that mystery. So I don't need to go learn anything else. I already know how it works. It's just the open source version. That's very cool. All right, does anybody else have anything else this week?
That's it for me.
None that I can remember.
All right. I'm sure Walt did other stuff that he and I chatted about. He doesn't remember, but that's okay. We're going to move on. We're going to do the conclusion of this show and wrap it up. So don't forget to follow us over on the Twitters. We are at Linux Install. You can follow the Google Plus community over at plus.google.com plus Linux Install Net. And then you can see what Walt's doing over at Jevack.com, what Joe is doing over at whatimeplayingnow.com, what I'm doing over at DevOpsMastery.com. That's my new site for DevOps stuff. And speaking of DevOps stuff, I get to speak at OhioLinux Fest on October 25th. I will be presenting between 4 and 5 p.m. in room 230 and 231. Just found that out today. Not that anybody's going to remember that by the time they get there. Don't worry, there'll be a schedule. You'll be able to find me. I have a link to my session description. It's Management Wants DevOps. Where do we begin? And I'm just going to talk about where to start, what to look for, what to think about, and how to basically start, how I would suggest starting it. It's not the only way you can do it. There's 100 ways to do it, but it's the way I'm going to do it. And our buddy and former co-host Greg is talking at 2 o'clock in the same room about Android development on Linux. And I've seen some of the slides because he's made me look at them. And there's too many of them, but he's working on that. But they look good. Joe basically taught me how to do slides for a presentation, so I'm applying the same rules to my own. And actually, Joe and several of our executives at Joe's employer pointed out that I had way too many slides in my presentation, so we kept cutting and cutting and cutting, and then they said you should probably still cut more, but go with it. So my presentation will be very slide poor, but lots of information. So come check us out at Ohio Linux Fest. Even if you don't want to see me speak because you're tired of listening to me because I'm on this podcast every week, that's fine. Just come to Ohio Linux Fest if you're in the area, or if you're not, trek to Ohio Linux Fest and come check out all of the coolness going on there. The Ohio Linux Fest is at ohiolinux.org. I don't know why there's no fest in there. It's just kind of confusing to me. But anyways, what should everybody do, Walt?
Install some Linux.
Have a nice week, everybody.
See ya.